Hello and welcome to Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela-Chester, where we enlighten, empower, and inspire you to become your most authentic self. The tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And that's what I want to do today is get you fired up about living life. Today we have a special guest, Eve Walker. She is from Believers Coaching. You can find her in the Los Angeles metro. Well, turning your pain into purpose is exactly what Eve has done. She had a heart attack when she was 28 years old, but she is now living a full life of service with gratitude. Well, a heart attack at 28 is not common, but it happened to Eve. She's a Kaiser Permanente Southern California consultant for the Medi-Cal Strategy State Program Department. Like many other women in their 20s, Eve was active and hardworking. She loved modern dancing and had 2 young sons. When she began feeling tired after minor exertion, such as walking up and down the stairs or even going to work, she didn't think she required medical help. She attempted to get a boost from coffee and candy the way that we do, and even took an aspirin to relieve her pain. But one day, Eve felt that telltale tingling traveling up the left side of her body. A neighbor took her to the hospital where testing revealed she had suffered a heart attack. She was later diagnosed with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a thickening of the heart muscle. Doctors prescribed medication and advised her to limit certain activities. Well, if anyone who knows Eve knows, limiting activities is not something on her list of things to do. So without any further ado, let's bring her on. Hello, Eve. How are you?
Hello, Dr. Angela. What a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, before we get into all of the wonderful things that you do, such as you're a national spokesperson, volunteer for the American Heart Association, just tell me a little bit more about who is Eve Walker.
Eve Walker is a survivor. Eve Walker is a go-getter. Eve Walker does not take no for an answer. And Eve Walker is a person who lives for service. And I'm a mother and a friend, an auntie, a sister, and someone who is passionate about living and turning my pain into purpose.
Yes, I love that. Turn your pain into purpose. And so many of us have stories that can really help teach and enlighten others if we simply took the moment to share and not keep all of that wonderful information to ourselves. Now, I know that you provide a service called Believers Coaching. And can you tell us a little bit more about that? You're in the Los Angeles area.
Yes, I'm in the Los Angeles area, and I am a certified and licensed life coach, and I help people in specific areas, in particular people who are struggling with career choices, diagnosis and disease, how to transition, how to find their purpose, how to map goals, and just how to sometimes get out of that rut that sometimes we can get stuck in, just going about our everyday routine in life and really get back on track to finding what you were developed and designed and purposed to do. And I'm more of a accountability partner in helping people to realize those goals.
Mm-hmm. And I like how you said that you are an accountability partner, especially when we're dealing with the personal things in our lives. You can help people that are, be it that you're talking to them about things dealing with their health, as far as like the Heart Association is concerned, or you're helping them just stay balanced and create a better sense of self. Don't most of us need someone that we can just talk to openly, honestly, and know that there's no judgment there?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've always been a strong proponent of coaching and life coaching. Before I even became a coach, I've seen several coaches. I think anyone who is on a path to lead to success, and whatever success is by their definition, should have a coach. Any great team, any team actually, from Little League to the pros, there's coaches. There's tons of talent, but they need a coach to help guide them to get to where they need to go. So I am a strong believer and proponent for coaches.
Yes. Now, what is your role as the National Spokeswoman Volunteer for the American Heart Association?
My role with the American Heart Association has been, my role with the American Heart Association has been to promote health with the Go Red for Women campaign. And I do a lot of things locally, whether it's luncheons for Go Red for Women or speaking at different events regarding women's health. I am a spokeswoman that just goes and let people know what their health looks like and, where they are realistically, and just kind of like is a mirror and a looking glass to let them know that anything could happen to you if you put your health at risk.
Most definitely. And I like you said, anything can happen. Sometimes it's a small something. Sometimes it's a very large something. But anytime we put our health at risk, we really need to take the steps to bring it back around to, just take control of what we're doing and how we're doing it. Our health is so important. As a cancer survivor, it's important on that end as well. So that's right, listeners, you have two survivors that are speaking to you today, coming to you today. That's right, whoa. And it's awesome because we are here. We are living testaments that things happen, but that doesn't mean that it has to slow you down. Now, with the Heart Association, how did you decide to get involved?
I'm going to be completely honest here. I did not want to be the poster child for heart disease, like never. I was like ducking and dodging anytime anybody brought it up. And it just so happens a church that I was a member at for a long time, I did not know that one of the VPs for the American Heart Association on the West Coast was a member there. And, I've done other theve I had done other things in the church, as far as speaking and, motivating people. And he came up to me one Sunday and he was like, Eve, I really think you should consider volunteering with the American Heart Association. It was like he said it in slow motion. And I was like, no. What's so funny is, like, by the time I got in my car, I just felt like God was saying, you're going to do it. And I reluctantly got involved, not knowing that by me helping people, it would actually help me. And that's been about 4.5 years.
Now, take us back to prior to having your heart attack. I know that many times when you've had something large, something major, something catastrophic happen to you, we have a tendency to judge our time according to that incident. So we're going to look at prior to, before you had your heart attack. What was your lifestyle like? Were you active? Were you, 3 cups of coffee a day? Talk to us about that.
Well, even from, 7, 8 years old, I was always into dance, modern dance, jazz, ballet. So dance has, been a love of mine for a very, very long time. And prior to me having the heart attack, I was still dancing. And I was doing liturgical dance at this ministry that I was at, and I was working full-time mother. I felt like I was leading a very active lifestyle. I walked as much as I possibly could. I was a size 6. I didn't think that I was unhealthy in any kind of way, so there was no way or indicator that would make me to believe that something could happen to me or that something was wrong with me.
Mhm. Mhm. And I like how you said you thought that everything was right. You thought that you were doing everything that you were supposed to do, trying to keep your weight under control, so on and so forth, staying active and all of that. So that really leads me to ask the next question, and please share as much as you're comfortable with, and that is, what happened? Was just how did this come about, and were there any warning signs?
Hindsight is always 20/20, as they say. And when I looked back over the years, I realized that there were warning signs. To answer your first question, what happened was, at the time I was working for a large international tax firm, and it was, it's always tax season at a tax firm. So, just busy doing my everyday thing. And, listeners, don't judge me. This particular day, I had a king-size Snickers. I haven't had one since, FYI. But, and I was, drinking, coffee. I was just trying to push through, not knowing that I was, taking some, absurd amount of caffeine, but, just trying to push through as, most people do in corporate America. And I remember I started not feeling well, like, towards the end of the day. And as I was walking to my car, I remember my legs literally feeling like tree trunks, like I could barely pick them up. It was the oddest sensation and the oddest feeling. I mean, I can't explain it other than they just felt like weights. And so I started to feel dizzy, and I was literally less than a mile from a local hospital, and I know I would not suggest anyone to do this. If you feel these symptoms, call 911. But I drove myself to the hospital, barely making it. When I got, to the emergency circular parking area, I literally felt like I was going to faint. And someone helped me walk into, the triage area. And I remember them taking my blood pressure, and the guy gave me an aspirin for some reason. He kept asking me if I was on drugs, and I'm like, no, I'm not on drugs. It's like, I just came from work. Do you see my work badge? Because, my heart rate was abnormal. And, it was a very, very busy clinic. And, after being there, after being there for about, I don't know, maybe 25 minutes, I'm like, oh, I'm not dying? Okay, and I snuck out. And, again, I don't advise this, but I'm so thinking about, I have to pick my son up. I have to go get my kids. Again, remember, I was 28 years old. Having a heart attack was not, it was the furthest thing from my mind. I'm like, okay, maybe I just, indulged too much in caffeine, whatever. And that's how I left it. Okay, so a couple days went by. I was feeling increasingly tired. At the time, I lived in a 3-bedroom colonial home in Detroit, Michigan, and all the bedrooms were upstairs. So I was so short of breath, I couldn't even walk up the stairs. So do I say, hey, Eve, that's a good indicator to go to the hospital? No. I say, I should go stay at my mom's house for a couple days. I don't have to walk up and down stairs. And so, sometimes you have to laugh to keep yourself from crying. So I proceeded to stay at my mom's house for a couple days. And during that time, I was popping aspirin because that's what they gave me at the hospital. I was not feeling well. So, and I remember this day as clear as bell. Like, it was the season finale of American Idol, and it was the first season, and I remember it was Justin Guarini and Kelly Clarkson, and I wanted Justin to win because I like his hair. And I remember I was talking to my neighbor, and we were watching the finale, and my mom's neighbor, but, it's my mom's house, so everybody over there. And I felt like a mosquito had bit me on my leg. That's what it felt like. I was just like, It was like a pinch on my leg. And then that sensation proceeded to go up my arm, my side. And then when I felt it in my jaw, I remembered reading something that said, you know, that was a symptom of a heart attack. And then I kind of felt my hands, and they felt kind of clammy, and I felt weird. But I wanted to see who was going to win. But I did tell my neighbor, I said, I think I'm having a heart attack. And she's like, what? And, I mean, she freaked out. She panicked. She didn't call 911. The next thing I know, I was like in her car. We're doing 80 miles per hour. Again, I do not recommend this to your listeners. Call 911. And, you know, we were in the hospital so fast. And, you know, she kind of explained to them what was going on. And the next thing I know, they're like taking my vitals, ripping my shirt open, and, you know, from there, so many things were a blur, like them giving me nitroglycerin, which was not the thing to do with my diagnosis, but one thing led to another. I wound up getting a heart catheterization, and for those who don't know, it's if you've ever heard of angioplasty, which I'm sure most people have heard of, it's when they stick they make an incision near your groin, and then they stick a tube all the way up to your heart, and then they dye, and then they take pictures. And that's how, you know, I was formally diagnosed with heart disease.
Well, listeners, do not worry. We have to take a very short break, but when we get back, we will continue to talk with Eve Walker from Believers Coaching, and today she is talking about the importance of turning pain into purpose as a 28-year-old heart attack survivor. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. My name is Dr. Angela-Chester, and I am your host. Today, we are speaking with Eve Walker, and she is telling us about turning your pain into purpose. She is a heart attack survivor. That's right. When she was 28 years old, she had a heart attack, and now, as we fast forward and look at her life in Los Angeles, she's telling us some things that we can do to make sure that we are living the best life that we possibly can, and how we can take care of our health. So, Eve, you were telling us about this experience and how mind-blowing it would be at, 28 years old to go, I think I'm having a heart attack. And just how that is mind-blowing. Like I said, just to hear those words come out of your mouth as your neighbor going, what? Really? Okay, so we're now at the hospital. They have given you treatment. You know that you're not dying, but, your life is totally and completely changed from this moment on. How do you deal with life after having had a heart attack?
Well, first, I have to say, there's phases. The first thing, obviously, was shock. I'm like, I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience. Literally, I felt like I could see myself lying there and asking myself, what are you doing there? And I remember in my hospital room after me having the procedure, and, basically I had to lie still so I didn't bleed to death for several hours. I remember people being in my room at the time. It was like my mother, my sons, who were very young at the time, my pastor, my friends, a couple of my siblings. And everybody sounded like they were Charlie Brown's teacher. The womp, 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 womp. They were talking and they were saying things and people were praying. It was just like a lot of white noise. And I was just in a different place. And from that place to leaving the hospital and just really feeling depressed and really having a season of depression with doctors telling me, you know, you won't be able to dance anymore, you won't be able to hike, or things that would exasperate me. You know, they said a lot of things that I wouldn't be able to do. And at that moment, for a quick moment, I believed them. And so I went into a depression for a little while. And, you know, it really took some time for me to figure out what was going to be the next step of my life.
And were there any things in particular in determining what the next steps were going to be? Did the doctors tell you how to determine that? Or do you feel that just because of your type of personality, there were certain things that you knew that you simply had to do?
Well, I mean, again, being in the hospital, I remember after the incident, I said to myself, I don't feel like dying today. Okay? This is not going to happen. I mean, I'm going to push through. So, you know, it's like the flesh may have been weak, but my spirit, my soul was like strong, pushing through. Like, girl, you're going to get up from here and you're going to be fine. And, you know, you are going to turn this test into a testimony. And I'm like, oh, if I could just catch up with my spirit. Because that was not how I was feeling, Dr. Angela. I was like, this is it, you know. And, no pun intended. But, you know, I just really, it was hard for me to see past that moment. But I knew that I was a resilient woman. I knew that I came from a family of resilient women. And I knew somehow, some way, I was going to make it.
So let's fast forward, 10, 15 years or so. How have you managed your diagnosis now? How has your life changed, and what do you do differently?
Oh, you know what? I have to be 100% honest. You know, I struggled the first few years after my diagnosis with not managing my life well. And then I found that there was a secret. And the secret was really taking the power back, taking the power back in my life and in what was pronounced over me, and just making a determination that I was going to live my best life. And I think the number one thing that I changed, you know, after, you know, several other stints in the hospital for palpitations and angina and, you know, symptoms, was I decided that I wanted to live a positive life. I wanted to remove negativity from my life, starting with me and my mindset. And I wanted to be positive. I wanted to create positive energy and just really change the way I thought, from being a victim to being a victor, and to be able to really walk in power and strength and really say, I'm here for a reason, heart disease. So you might want to step back because, you know, I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. And I am going to live my best life. And I think with anyone that has a diagnosis, at some point you have to make a decision and a determination that you're going to fight. And just continue to fight.
Yes, you really do just have to determine within yourself that today is the day. The being afraid or scared or frightened or feeling unsettled about it, that ends today. Today I take the control back. Absolutely. I have to agree with you on that one. Now, I know that as a what we call a real woman with the Go Red for Women campaign with the American Heart Association, I know that there's a mission, or like there's a call that comes along with stepping into that role. What would you say is your call to action or your mission with that program?
Well, the call to action for the Go Red for Women campaign, and as being a real woman, is to let women and the world know that, first of all, heart disease is the number one killer in all women taking more lives than all cancers combined. Number one killer. More than 1 in 3 women are living with some form of cardiovascular disease. And the American Heart Association and Go Right for Women's call to action is partly to understand the facts that I just stated and to know your numbers because it could save your life. So there's 5 important numbers that will help one determine the risk for cardiovascular disease. So the first thing is to know your total cholesterol. The second thing is to know your HDL cholesterol, to know your blood pressure, to know your blood sugar, and to know your BMI, which is your body mass index. And you can find these numbers out by partnering with your healthcare provider and, to schedule an appointment and to learn more about your numbers and how to keep them at a healthy rate and to work to bring them to a healthy range.
And listeners, I know that BMI sounds like curse words to many people because, that is how much fat's on our bodies. But we really do need to, at this particular stage in our lives, whatever age you are, we need to take our health back into our own hands, and we need to become more aware of our habits and make wise lifestyle changes. Not only if you believe that heart disease or even cancer runs in your family, just to be your best self. And that's what we're talking about today. How can you make sure that you are well as best as you possibly can? And speaking of family, is it important to know about your family history when it comes to any form of heart disease or heart issues?
Oh, my God. I cannot stress enough how important it is to know your family history because in all actuality, my story really started with my sister Louise. When I was 12 years old, I just remember admiring my sister Louise, who was, beautiful, popular, funny, and we fought all the time because I was just determined. I mean, she was 5 years older than me, but I was just determined that I was going to hang with her and her older friends, and she was just determined that was not going to happen under no circumstances whatsoever. And so I antagonized her. We fought because I loved the attention, and I really just looked up to her at the end of the day. And I remember one particular day, she had went to a party with her friends, and I remember her telling her girlfriend that she really didn't feel like going, but she got dressed and went to this party anyway. And a couple hours later, I remember my mother and father, I remember my mother screaming and just saying, "No, Lord, no." And they rushed out of the door. And, when they came back home, my parents told us that my sister, who was 16 at the time, had died. She was dancing on the dance floor, and those people were around her remembered that she was dancing and she fell on the floor. She turned blue, and she passed away at 16 years old.
Wow.
And when my parents came back sullen and my mother just numb, it was like my life truly changed from that point on, but we never talked about it. We never talked about it. We didn't have a family meeting, and there was 6 of us after my sister passed away. It was 5 siblings. We never had a family meeting. We never talked. Talked about it. It was like something that happened, and I just remember being terrified. I remember, suffering from insomnia, thinking that monster was going to come and get me. And I don't know if it was like a shadow of the things to come in my life, but I remember as a very young girl, maybe 12 years old, my mother taking me to the morgue. And I literally saw my sister on the screen. I didn't really comprehend what was going on,
Right.
But I did comprehend what was going on. And I mean, I felt the seventh grade. I was going through serious sadness and really a lot of pain. And, you know, I mean, we didn't go to group therapy, grief counseling, none of that. I mean, our lives went on as if it didn't happen. And it wasn't until I would say several years ago, 2013, 2014, I was talking to my cardiologist, and he was asking me about my family history because I was doing a genetic test. Mm-hmm. And I remember my mother having enlarged heart. I mean, my mother never talked about her heart issues. I remember my mother telling us that my grandmother had a couple heart attacks. My grandmother was like 96 or something when she passed away. Wow. But he suggested that I get my sister's death certificate. And literally at 40 years old is when I found out that my sister died from heart disease.
Wow. Wow.
So knowing your family history is powerful.
Wow. What information. Now, I know that there are so many people that are thinking, I'm the family historian, I keep up with all of those records. Well, now when you get a copy of the death certificate, make note of what it says. Because so many people don't know how their relatives have passed away, and having that medical history is so incredibly important. And look at when, you know, how old you were when you found out. All of that time had passed away, or had passed, and you know, it's just amazing how so many times, especially with our health, that we're just living our lives day to day, and we have no idea at what could happen to us, and we think that we're well. And you stated that before. You know, you go about your day to day, and it is just mind blowing at what can be found on certain sheets of paper. Let me tell you, that just blows me away. Well, listeners, I know that you are intrigued and you want to keep going, but we do need to take a very short break right here. But don't worry, we will come back and continue the conversation with Eve Walker. She's the owner of Believers Coaching in the Los Angeles, California Metro. We will be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela-Chester. Today's guest is Eve Walker. She is the owner of Believers Coaching in the Los Angeles Metro. And we're talking about turning your pain into purpose. And her pain was at 28 years old. She found herself having a heart attack. That's right, 28 years old. And how she has turned that particular incident in her life into something just so large that has reached the lives of many others. She is now the national spokeswoman volunteer for the American Heart Association, as well as a life coach and motivational speaker. So, Eve, let me ask you this. Where can our listeners find more information on, you know, heart disease and risk factors and how important being on top of these things are?
Thank you so much for asking that question. You can definitely log on to heart.org. That is the American Heart Association website. And you can find out what the risk factors are. You can find about treatments, and you can learn about the efforts and the technology and what the American Heart Association has done as far as heart disease and why it's so important to support them. Also, to learn more about Go Red for Women, you can go to goredforwomen.org, and you can learn about my story and other real women's stories. It's about, I think, 8 or 9 of us around the country, and you can learn about several stories on there, and also about the Go Red for Women initiative and how you can volunteer and support in the areas that you live in.
That is absolutely awesome. I'm so glad that it is a nationwide program and that you can have women that are able to really mentor other women and keep them encouraged, keep them just that accountability person, that cheerleader in your corner. For anyone who has ever experienced a life-changing diagnosis, we know that we need that support team. We need someone else who understands that we don't have to explain every little thing to, that you can just kind of look at them and a simple hug or a simple nod of the head or a holding your hand and saying, I know, I understand how incredibly important that is for the person going through it, as well as for the family. You know, I'm always talking about how my family are co-survivors with me. They went through their version of surviving my illness, and I think that as a listener, check that out. If it's you or someone you know, or it might even be in instances where you want to bring someone to your church, perhaps, so that they can speak about it from a woman's perspective for perhaps your women's ministry, which just leads me to the next question for you, Eve, because I know that you are a life coach and a motivational speaker. So how has this being those things, as well as a spokesperson for the American Heart Association, how does all of that work for you, with you? How do people get in contact with you to bring them, like I said, like to their women's ministry?
How it all works for me is I live a life of service, and so I am here to serve, and you can certainly contact me on my Facebook page, which also lists my services, at Coach Eve Dion. I'm on Twitter at Lady Eve Dion, and I'm on Instagram at Be About That Life. It's all one word, Be About That Life, on Instagram, and I will definitely respond and get back to you.
Yeah. Now, there may be someone who's feeling just a little overwhelmed right now, and they're so glad that you were on the show, because this is something that's hitting home for them. Do you have any words of encouragement or inspiration? What would you say to them?
I would say time out for the pity party. Pity party is over. It is what it is. If you feel like life is giving you lemons, it's time to make lemonade punch. It's time for you to get out of what you feel as the end and make it a new beginning. It's time for you to begin to see yourself in a different light. You're here because you're still supposed to be here. It's not time for you to go. So for the rest of your days, it's time for you to be positive, be an example of what surviving looks like, and grab life by the horns and live it, enjoy it, and make what you do in between the dash important, and leave a legacy of survival and just being phenomenal and going for what you believe, your dreams, and not let anything stop you.
Today is the day. Make the decision. You are going to continue to go forward. I love it. I love it. I love it. Now, Eve, I know that as a coach, as a therapist, that there's nothing like having that face-to-face access. I know that many times, we will do a Skype session for someone that may be traveling, but being able to come and visit you there in the LA Metro. Can you kind of tell us a little bit more about Believers Coaching, and how does someone have that face-to-face time with you?
I have office space in Orange County and office space in LA, and also you can Skype me as well at Queen Eve Dion on Skype to have a Skype session if you like. But it always will start off with a phone call. And on my Facebook page, you will see my contact information. And, we can just have an initial call and see where we are. Sometimes people just need to talk through their situation, and it's not always as bad as you think that it might be. And sometimes you just need a listening ear, someone that will support you and help you to get past what you're feeling. But you can definitely also call me as well at 650-825-LIFE. That's 650-825-5433. And that's anywhere in the world. And, we can go from there. But I definitely would love to talk to anyone who is interested in getting their life on track and getting back to the next phase.
I am so glad that you were able to come on and share with us today. Listeners, taking care of yourself is so important. It is so vital. And I hope that everyone will just take a moment to check out those numbers. Just make sure. And Eve, can you give us that again? You were saying that there are 5 things that are really, really important that we need to know. I believe you said it was 5 things that we need to know the numbers for. Could you give that to us one more time? So, and listeners, let's make note of this so that when you make that appointment to go to your doctor, you can say, "Hey, doc, I was listening, and I'm supposed to know my numbers." What are those numbers again, Eve?
Right. Those numbers are knowing your total cholesterol, your HDL, which is your good cholesterol, your blood pressure, your blood sugar, and your BMI, which is your body mass index. And the BMI definitely has something to do with, your weight and how your weight plays a role in your health. And you want to partner with your healthcare provider to learn those numbers and to help bring those numbers into a healthy range.
Most definitely. And that's something even with being a cancer survivor that they tell you we have to be aware of our weight and knowing your blood pressure. It is so important. I know that we want to be curvy and we want to, look good in our clothing and all of that, but we really, really do have to make sure that we take care of our health and we don't place ourselves in jeopardy just so we can be fashionable for a particular season. That you can still be cute and be health conscious at the same time. Eve, thank you so much for joining me on the program today.
It was so much of my pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Listeners, thank you for joining me again for another episode of Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. We hope that you have enjoyed what we are bringing your way. Our goal is to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your most authentic self. And I just want to leave you with this quick note. Remember that eagles don't fly with pigeons. I want you to be encouraged. Until next time, have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.